are Democratic politicians or others calling you that distort or oversimplify what they're all about? Why are they wrong?
Well, I think that, perhaps the biggest distortion that I think the other side likes to make of conservatives is that we don't necessarily care for the poor, the most vulnerable, and the most needy when we talk about making sure that we're running a tight fiscal ship and being responsible as conservatives. And quite frankly, I'm tired of hearing that, because I think we do know that we care for our most poor, our most vulnerable, and our most needy. So that's a big distortion that they put out there. One of the things that I did when I was at Health and Human Services is I recognized that the need was a lot greater than what the state could actually handle and shoulder that burden. So what I did is I worked with Commissioner Stephen at that time, and we came up with the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiative, where we reached out to the private sector and to the nonprofit sector to try to fill in that gap so that we could offer more services to those that were in need through private sector solutions and not always looking to the government to do everything. And I think we frankly need more of that kind of leadership in Concord, and someone that's going to call out the Democrats when they try to make those particular distortions on us.
And then Ovide would answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. So those of you who were not here in the mid-90s, when the Concord Monitor is down to the speaker, is nothing compared to what they've done to me. So I've been a beneficiary of some really creative cartooning. In fact, when I was named chairman of the State Board of Education, Mike Marlin, your friend, Mr. Speaker, did a head and shoulder shot of me, like this, except I was wearing glasses. And those glasses had stained glass windows in them. And the caption was, "I'll bring a fresh perspective to the public school system of New Hampshire." And then I was pictured with Governor Merrill standing next to Attorney General Howard in a Moscow outfit before the Kremlin overseeing public schools. Do I need to go on? Or can I share in the pain that comes with public service when you stand on principle? I was proud to be named the Conservative of the Year by the Americans for Prosperity in 2011. Because those of you who know me know that I stand on principle. And that's what New Hampshire needs: principled leadership and tested leadership. And don't tell me conservatives don't have a heart. You start hearing about how anti-this and anti-that I am. Betty and I have been foster parents of a special needs young man since he was 2 weeks old. And since she's not here, she's meeting with him. He's 24 years old right now, living in the community. Conservatives have a heart, and they act from that heart. And we'll stand with them every step of the way. So let's get on this team together, please. Thank you.
Bill, if you could ask the next question to Ovide.
Sure, Ovide, today we learned some disturbing news about the Department of Employment and Security and its commissioner stepped down over fiscal corruption charges. What will you do to ensure that ethics returns to the executive branch?
Well, thank you, Bill, for that question. Most of you don't know, Tara Reardon, the commissioner of the Department of Employment and Security, was resigned today. It was disclosed that her department hired her daughter and put her on part-time work, perhaps consistent with ethical rules that currently exist. Then she asked, apparently one of the allegations, asked the HR department to fire her so she could get unemployment benefits. This is the same direct commissioner of employment security which awards unemployment benefits. Let me tell you this. We are going to have the highest standard possible in state government. If I'm the governor, and I'm going to be proactive, and we're going to meet with commissioners and set a higher standard than we have today. There's no room for this. No room for self-dealing, no room for taking taxpayer dollars to feather your own nest. And I hope these allegations are not true, but if they're not true, why would you resign? And we need to make sure that we bring the best and brightest to our state, to work with state government in positions of authority. Because of my relationships with people across the sectors of our state, I will bring the best and brightest, and I'll insist on the highest ethical standards possible. So help me God. Thank you.
The pause in between that would get us moving a little bit faster.
Yeah, I would comment on by saying it's absolutely imperative that New Hampshire have the most transparent system possible. And that's why when I talk about my opening remarks, making sure we're running a transparent and accountable government. We have to make sure that we have a robust board of ethics on the executive branch level. But at the same time, too, we have to make sure, I would work with my commissioners to make it absolutely imperative that if there's any appearance of conflict of interest, that they have to report that, or that they shouldn't be involved with a hiring decision or a firing decision if it looks like there's going to be certainly an appearance of conflict of interest. Now, in this particular case, I think we have to, see. Certainly, there's been allegations that have been made, but I would want to look at all the facts, make sure they're all out before we jump to any conclusions here. Because as we've seen in the past in state government, sometimes there's allegations made, and then the rest of the story comes out, and we learn out that it wasn't necessarily what it was. And I'm not saying that's the case in this case, but I think it's important to be prudent and not necessarily jump to conclusions. And in my last second, I just want to say, on that last question, the speaker's been called a bully. You know why? Because he inherited a $900 million deficit, and he dared to balance the budget, and I commend him for doing that, Mr. Speaker.
Bill, if you could ask the next question, sorry, Alex, you're the next person. If you could ask Ovide.
Yes, candidates for governor always say they'll be salesmen in chief. Why can't Maggie Hassan or Jackie Silly get on the horn, call up CEOs, and credibly convince them to create jobs in New Hampshire as effectively as we can?
Thank you for that question. When you're on the other end of the phone representing the state of New Hampshire, and your record is that you want to control healthcare by creating a new PUC, that's called Maggie Care, and basically having a one-size-fits-all approach with state government, and you're trying to recruit a business to come to New Hampshire, you have no credibility. When you call an executive of a business in another state, and you say, I'm in a state that doesn't have a sales or income tax, yet you haven't taken the pledge of Jackie Silly, and you supported an income tax in your prior career, earlier in your career. Now you've had an election year conversion, you don't have credibility. When you've supported 84 new tax hikes, a LLC tax on small business, you have no credibility. I have credibility. I've been a business advocate, a business owner. I know business, and I've worked with business in this state. I've consistently campaigned on conservative principles, free market principles. And with the help of people like Steve Forbes' endorsement, we are going to have New Hampshire as the beacon for economic development in this country, and in this region as well. And I'll recruit them directly. I won't be simply a spokesman in chief. I'm going to be the ambassador in chief for New Hampshire to recruit new businesses and to help keep them here, those that are struggling or having issues in our state. And finally, I'm going to appoint a business advocate to be a troubleshooter in state government, to cut through red tape or bureaucracy. And then we're going to work with a business advocacy group to make sure we implement changes in state government to make it life easier for business to grow, flourish, and relocate here. And access to capital is part of that approach. So I will be a proactive spokesman and ambassador for New Hampshire. Maggie Hassan, Jackie Silly, no credibility on that front at all. And they don't believe it.
Thanks, Alex. I look forward to being our state's salesman in chief. And one of the lines I've used very often is I said, I am aiming to be governor of all Patrick's worst nightmare. And I say that because I want him to know that I'm shamelessly going into his state and poaching jobs from the state of Massachusetts up here to New Hampshire. Why? Because New Hampshire is second in the country per capita on the amount of people that commute out of state every day to go to work. My father, who's sitting here in the front row this evening, maybe you've seen his mug on TV recently in our new ad. He's been commuting to Boston every day since 1986, since they moved up here. But we're only going to be able to do it. I'm only going to be able to be a salesman if I give them a good reason why they should come to New Hampshire. We have to become a more business-friendly environment. We'll do that by cutting our business profits tax, reducing the business enterprise tax, cutting through regulations, becoming a right-to-work state, lowering the cost of healthcare and electricity rates. All these different things. My philosophy is it's not state government that creates jobs, but it's state government that creates the environment and atmosphere for good jobs to be created. And I can't wait to get on the phone, call up these CEOs every week and say, hey, you thought about doing business in New Hampshire before, why and why not? And let me tell you about the good things that we're doing here in the state and why you should be locating your jobs in New Hampshire.
Bill, if you could ask the next question to Kevin.
Kevin, the legislature left open the issue of education funding by the state this past term. Can you just discuss what your understanding of the issue is, what its likely and possible impacts will be on the state budget, taxes,
this is a crucial issue. We need an ed funding amendment in this state if we're going to target aid to the neediest in communities. The formula that we're using right now is simply unsustainable. We're sending money to communities that quite frankly don't need it, and we're holding money back to those communities that do need it. And so as governor, I would work very hard to make sure we finally pass a constitutional amendment to put it on the ballot and give the voters the right to vote on this issue to say we're going to target aid as we've always done in the state of New Hampshire. John Lynch has been governor for 8 years. He campaigned on this issue. He said when he was campaigning, he would solve this by passing an ed funding amendment. And I know it because I was working for Governor Benson at the time. It's a failed promise 8 years later. Even with a Democrat majority, he couldn't pass an ed funding amendment. So I would make that a very high priority of mine. But that's where my education plan begins. It doesn't end there. We need to reform the education system too. Allow for more school choice. Allow for more charter schools. I have a plan called Money Follows the Child, which would empower parents to choose the schools for their children rather than sending the money to the local school districts. We need to reform things like tenure reform as well and seniority so that we can keep good teachers around even if they haven't been on the job very long. So I look very forward to working with the next legislature, be it Republican or Democrat. I certainly hope it's Republican, but working with whoever it is to make sure that we allow the people in the state the opportunity to solve this once and for all. It's time to get the courts out of meddling with education funding and put it back in the hands of the legislature.
Talking about what Kevin just said, you could recall his remarks.
I'm going to answer the question that was asked because it's the important question that's being asked. And I will let the audience decide whether or not one of us has a different view of this. I've been chairman of the State Board of Education, as I said, in the mid-90s, former teacher, former diocesan school board chairman overseeing the Catholic schools for upstate against the cartoon that just ran. I was defended in the Claremont lawsuit. We won in the Superior Court. The Speaker's question is quite right. The Supreme Court is the one that's changed the Constitution by the Claremont 2 decision, in which I was intimately involved. We need to have a constitutional amendment because if we do not, we'll see another lawsuit coming from the plaintiffs saying we're underfunding the educational adequacy. Do you understand what this Claremont 2 decision has done? Essentially, the court has said that when it comes to education in New Hampshire, it is a non-delegable duty. That means the state cannot transfer to cities and towns and school districts the authority to chart educational planning to provide adequate education or to provide educational funding. And what we've done is taken away the power of the local communities to have local control. We need this constitutional amendment. I'm not speaking in theory, I'm speaking